right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Interchange, brought to you by Maximyz. My name is Rahel Heineke, and beside me is my co-host, Matthew Heineke, and we are so excited with our guest today. And I'll let Matt introduce him to us.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about corporate culture and diversity and inclusion, amongst other things. And our guest today is Jonathan Mueller. He's the co-CEO of Ascend Behavior Partners. He's been described as a leader who is smart and focused, having superior emotional intelligence, and a role model with grit, vision, and passion. He's helped families in Tanzania who lost loved ones due to AIDS restart their businesses with a small business microfinancing program, has been a ski coach, and is a dedicated husband and father of 3. So welcome, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Matt and Rahel. It's great to be here.
Awesome.
Our pleasure.
Yes. So we always start these discussions by first breaking the ice. So what I want to ask you, Jonathan, is what is the weirdest thing you have done that you can remember?
Oh gosh, weirdest. I don't know if this is weird or just plain stupid. Let you all be the judge.
Okay.
I way back when I studied abroad in Beijing, China for a semester, and at one point we had rented bikes, and they dropped us off way up the Lee River, and we floated the Lee River, and it was amazing. And then we had to bike it was over 20 miles back, and my bike broke within a half mile. And I tried everything I could. I was duct taping my foot to the bike and to the pedal, and finally I was just like, I can't do anything else. So I just left the bike, and I was with 2 friends, and we got back, and we were eating dinner, and the bike owner came over and had me thrown in jail.
What?
Oh no.
What?
It was, I think every America, at least back in the 90s, ends up in a Chinese jail at some point. But yeah, he put me in and said, you've got to pay for this bike. But I was like, no, it's broken. I had no way to get back. Anyway, everything turned out fine. It was a very short stint. And yeah, but that was probably pretty dumb.
Oh my gosh. So wait, Jonathan, you're saying you've been in a Chinese jail?
I've been in a Chinese jail. Actually, that's not even the most interesting part. The best part is it was literally the classic good cop, bad cop routine. And the good cop was just sitting there and saying all the right good cop things. And at one point started to quote Thomas Jefferson and George Washington to me. So I was like, oh, wow, very, very learned. Trying to co-opt our founding fathers. So yeah.
Oh my God, that is hilarious.
Cool. So it sounds like you've traveled quite a bit, and you lived in Tanzania for a while. Of course, Rahel's from Tanzania. So tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Before we get into that one, what I wanted to mention was that I saw a very interesting Isaac Newton quote on your site, and I wanted to give you one of ours that we like, and it's, if I have seen further than others, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
And I thought that really fits why we're doing what we're doing, in this podcast, because, you are ahead of there. We are a young company, and there are many people probably listening who are trying to learn about how do we get there? How do we get to where you are? And, standing on the shoulders and looking and giving this information about what you've already done, been there, done that, and sharing with others. I think that was a very fitting quote from Isaac Newton for this one. So I just wanted to start it off like that.
Right on. Oh, I love that quote. To me, there's a humbleness, right? That, so much of what we're fortunate to have in life is because of our mentors, our families, our parents, our friends, teachers who have gone so far out of their way to help us become that. And I look back, and a lot of times I shake my head over my life, why would someone have invested any time in me at all? And so anyway, I love the quote because it feels like this profound sense of wanting to pay it forward. Yes. And Isaac Newton captured it perfectly.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Sorry. You can go back to your question.
No, now you got me off track, because you're talking about Isaac Newton, and I love physics and math and science and all that. I have a degree in engineering. So, yeah, I think Isaac Newton was probably one of the smartest people that ever lived, and just amazing. All the stuff he came up with is crazy. Mm-hmm. Anyways, that's totally off track. We're going back Tanzania. So yeah, it's just interesting to hear a little bit about your experience in Tanzania and how that, I think you spoke about something to do with village.
Oh no! In your website, you mentioned you're like a village. The way you help your people, at least when you look at the feeling of your company, it feels like you're very together, stronger together. You know, we are not alone. We're not isolated. And you use the word village. So I was like, oh, that's something I totally can relate. You know, being from Tanzania, I'm like, yeah, I totally get that togetherness. I guess that's what you were asking about.
Yeah, so I was trying to tie it together, the experience of Tanzania and being in a village, and I've experienced that too, that there's this more kind of village type of thinking where we all take care of each other, which I think is lacking a little bit in the United States. So just be cool to hear all your thoughts about all that. It's a lot of stuff, but
yeah, it is lacking. One of the things that I believe as human beings, like we are relationship driven beings, right? Everything that we do is in a context of our local tribe or village or whatever we call it. And I mean, that's how we get going way back when, like that's how we get protection, right? That's how we keep the animals of the night away. But like you bring that to modern day and think about all these little potential villages that can exist, whether it's our family or our community, or for a lot of us who are spending 40 plus hours a week at work, that's a village, or I should say that has the opportunity to be a village, right? And it's so what's always felt critical to me is like, how can we be intentional about taking this group of human beings in this organization and making it feel like a community, like a village where we take care of one another, we support one another, and we help push each other to be better. That's felt important. And that was a huge thing I learned in Tanzania. So I, the quick context of that is I spent close to 6 years in the corporate world before going to Tanzania. So I was a management consultant, and to this day I describe myself as a recovering management consultant. And I spent a few years in Silicon Valley, at a wonderful technology company. But one day I just woke up and said, I don't want to sell more supply chain software. There's more to what I want to do with my life. Coming back to this idea that I've been given so much. And so I had never spent time in Africa, and I found this wonderful NGO in Arusha, Tanzania, northern Tanzania, that would bring in volunteer business advisors. And so I was so fortunate to work with, it was both a microfinance program that made loans to people in the village who would secure loans for one another. You think about having 5 different people that take out a loan and then they're each securing loans. Anyway, the Grameen Bank pioneered this back in the 70s, but just a profoundly powerful way to help people and get access to, to small amounts of capital. But the other part, was a lot of families had owned a business, but lost their breadwinner to AIDS. And they were looking to restart their business, and they needed, just small amounts of capital, maybe a little bit of training or support or guidance here or there. But the biggest thing that I learned was, not to be like this big, like, oh, the white dude who's going to come in and save everyone, right? The Mzungu from the US who's going to be like, yes, I can save you and I'm here to help. And, even in the best of intentions, and I made this blunder, like even with the best of intentions, that's the absolute wrong approach, right? What's most important is how do you stand with people on their journey? And so I was really humbled over the course of the 6 months that I spent in Arusha to learn the importance of standing with people on their journey, and meeting them where they are and helping in whatever way I could.
Very, very insightful.
Yeah, that's really deep. I mean, first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for doing that. But yeah, it is that you mentioned the feeling of, the white people come and they help us, and it's more about standing with us. We say you teach a man to, teach a man to fish? Is that how it says? You remember that saying? You teach a man to fish, and then they have to, so that they can fish for themselves. You don't fish for them, and I think that's kind of what you are doing when you are in Arusha. But yeah, I like that aspect.
Yeah, for sure. And so you talk about creating this kind of village culture within your organization where everybody's looking out for each other and helping each other. What have you done to create that? What types of activities or ideas or processes do you use to create that village atmosphere?
I think it all starts with your values and being extraordinarily intentional about what's important to you as an organization. And so, I think every organization has a mission and a vision and values. I mean, it's almost just become like it's commodity, Like
Yeah.
there's like, I mean, even Enron, right? If you remember the Enron financial scandal, they had like 5 values that were like awesome values that I would have like picked for a company. So like, so it's not about just like having values that sit on a coffee mug. I get really frustrated by that. What's most important is that like, are those values that you espouse, are they being lived every single day in the organization? Are people demonstrating those values line behaviors, and are they reinforcing one another when that happens? And I think that's the best way, as an aside, the best way to determine culture in an organization is just, ask that one question. What behaviors get reinforced here? That will tell you the true culture of an organization. So I think it all starts with being super intentional and steeping new team members as they come on board in your value set. And so, it's why we have close to 40 hours of week 1 training, and we spend several hours on day 1. That's all we talk about. We talk about what our values are, but more importantly, we help new team members connect their personal experience to our values so that it sticks. And then, building on that, 6 hours of intentional relationship building training, which is really important in an organization that serves children with autism and families living with autism. You have to be, part of the, what we see in the most successful treatments is the quality of the therapeutic relationship with families. So we have like 6 hours of training that just talks about the basics of building strong relationships. And then I think a really important part, organizations that have strong cultures are not because like the CEO says we've got a strong culture, right? Or the head of HR says it. Organizations with strong cultures literally imbue their frontline team members to live those values and to feel ownership for that community, that village that we are. And so little things like we give everyone who starts gets a buddy that they get to meet before they even start, who starts helping them not only answer questions, but say, hey, here's what values we represent. They go out and grab coffee with them. We give every new team member who comes on board a $25 Visa gift card, and we say, hey, use this any way you want, but go out and build community. In whatever way you want. So that's also felt really important to, building that into our frontline team.
Wow.
Oh, that's great. I think that's really cool. Yeah. Especially when you're a new employee and you come into somewhere we don't know anybody, to feel that more accepted and to understand that, you have this kind of village type of values, I think goes a long way for sure. Because a lot of times, I remember I worked in the corporate world for 20 years, and you'd come in and they say, yeah, here's your mentor, and just call them every time you need something. But it was still kind of uncomfortable. There was not really a big outreach. It was just like, here's your packet, here's your training, read, here's our corporate, like you said, mission values, read through this, study it, memorize it, and then go on. And so I guess a follow-on question is, you instill this in your new hires, but how do you keep it going long term?
Yeah, that's so critically important. And I think there's a few ways it happens. One really important way is through storytelling. And it's something that we never, as leaders, we never have enough time to communicate, right? But we can never communicate too much. There's no such thing as communicate too much. In fact, I like to say, hey, once someone calls me up and says, hey, Jonathan, you don't have to talk about that anymore, because you've said it 10 times. That's when I know, all right, I've got to. So, as a leader, as storyteller, what I like to do is create an environment where I am catching people doing something right. So, I think it's pretty common in companies these days, or someone does something wrong and then, do you feel like you're going to jump all over them? That's the exact opposite. That's how you create non-psychologically safe cultures. But to create psychological safety, recognize someone who demonstrates a values aligned behavior and then shout it out to the rooftops. So I try to model doing a lot of that with my teams, so that in turn, they are doing it with their supervisees, and their supervisees are doing it with theirs. That's felt really important to push that through. And that storytelling has to always come back to, I use this term, I'm very open kimono, transparent. So I'm going to talk about my personal experiences, because that's, I'm going to tie it back to why, our playful spirit value or authentic relationships value was important to me, but then it has to emotionally resonate with our teams. And so being able to stay close enough to your teams where you understand, like, you're getting feedback from them ongoing about, what's going great, what's not going so well that we've got to tackle, and then creating emotional resonance with them through that storytelling is really critical. The other things is creating space and time for teams to be able to get together, which has been harder through COVID, certainly. But that it doesn't have to just be going out and going bowling, right, for a night, or going out to grab coffee. Having little get-togethers on Zoom. We did a lot of that throughout COVID, and just sharing stories of what's going well, what's not. Actually, at the holiday season, we had two of our team members actually, dress up as elves, and a whole kids and others jumped on a Zoom, and they read, the night before Christmas. So it's little things like that, and really empowering your teams so that they're doing it. You don't just have to rely on an HR department or a CEO or someone else to be doing it.
No, that's great. And you mentioned, you have this kind of playfulness, and what types of things have you done? I mean, you mentioned dressing up like the elves, but is there other types of things you do to encourage play and bonding together at work? Yeah,
we do all kinds of stuff. So we've done escape rooms before as teams. This is going to sound super silly, but we get bitmojis. I don't know if you're familiar, with a bitmoji, where it's like your persona in like any kind of, and you just share it. We have an internal messaging system that we use. And actually one of our clinical directors in Texas is awesome. Like every morning she puts up a different bitmoji that just says, "Good morning, Team Texas." And then everyone's like shooting bitmojis back and forth. "Good morning. Hey, what's up? Have a great day." And again, it's like really little silly things like that, but that we have found that's most powerful, because it's not about like having the big annual get together, right? Or the big holiday party. That's not what's powerful. What creates trust over time and builds authentic relationships are the sort of that little reinforcement of doing things like I just described, and lots more that just show people that you're showing up as leaders, as coaches and supervisors. That's always felt important.
I definitely see you are definitely living what you have in your missions. And I know one of your missions words, your values is fun. Your fun is your value. And as you're describing, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see you're living, breathing that, those values. So yeah, that's good to know. I like that view.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I think it's cool. Like you talk about the Bitmoji thing. Again, working in corporate America, I remember anytime you'd send a little post like that, or like one of those, like a GIF or a YouTube video to someone, I always felt like kind of guilty. Like, is my boss going to get mad? Like, sending this YouTube, I should be working right now. I'm sending funny, stupid YouTube videos to my colleagues. So I think it's really cool that you encourage that type of behavior, because I never got a chance to get that close to people either, because I felt like this is a work environment. This is not like have fun with your colleagues environment, which is totally wrong in my opinion, because you don't get to know each other on that level, and you don't create that village, and you're every person for themselves kind of thing, and there's not that psychological safety or emotional intelligence. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, at Ascend, one of the things, the work that we do, we're working with young children with autism, and in their homes, in the families' homes, and these are families whose world has changed, having gotten a diagnosis. What we see is, they're going through a grieving process for the child they thought they had. And so, going through and helping with like really hard skills like potty training, and any functional communication. These are really hard things. And so, we're very clear with our team, and we recognize how hard that is. And as hard as those things are, it's almost like, hey, being able to still imbue a playful spirit through the ups and through the downs, that's a really important thing to kind of keep in the forefront of our mind. It's almost like that expression of like, life is very serious, but we should never take ourselves too seriously. I think that's part of what we've tried to channel, that idea of playful spirit. And and the fact that we play with the young kids, right? And they respond to that.
Yeah. Now, how did you manage to do that, especially last year during such a time where it was difficult for everyone already, and now adding to them having this extra layer of difficulty? How did you feel that went for your company? Did it make it worse, better, or how did you navigate?
we faced a really existential question. You all remember, is like all of a sudden COVID was real, and where society was locking down, communities were locking down, schools were closing, and we faced this existential question, like, what, are we going to continue on? Are we going to shut down?
Yeah.
And do you know what, like, most and best informed our decision? The feedback from our families. We certainly had some families who paused treatment, but other families said, look, we need you now more than ever. Living with autism is so hard in the best of times, right? Kiddos need stability and routine and consistency and support. And so now we're in the midst of this global pandemic. And so our families came to us and said, hey, look, preschools are shut down, schools are shut down. We can't go out. We're totally out of our routine. We need your help more than ever. And so it was a no-brainer for us. And certainly it was hard. Like, I'll be honest. We'd always been providing home-based services. So, at least that wasn't a transition, but we had to make a lot of different, just sort of safety and other adjustments and program adjustments to make sure we were doing everything we could to protect the families we served and kiddos we served, and to protect our team members. That was just foundational for us. And it was really awesome is very early on, there was just this like extreme outpouring of support. And remember, we're like an entirely remote workforce where, our behavior technicians would go, to a family's home and then, commute back home. And so it was just like, it warmed my heart seeing on messaging channels, if someone was able actually to get some of the, antiseptic or cleaning supplies, somehow they got to, they'd be like, hey, I'm going to be here. I've got a pop-up antiseptic drop off. Does anyone need it? You'd be like, yes. Even toilet paper. Remember, like, toilet paper. So we'd have these pop-up toilet paper like drop off things. Like, who would have ever thought that was a thing? But sometimes it is in the hardest of times that I think true character gets revealed, and that's exactly what we saw in our teams. And I am filled with gratitude.
Yeah, I think it goes to show how the being a village, so being there for each other, even when times are down, you help each other up. So they already knew you as part of their village, part of their family. So if we're down, we're all down. So no, we're going to keep each other up. So that's awesome. That's wonderful. So did you see any changes, though, that were positive through the pandemic that you think you're going to keep after that?
One of the biggest things that I directly observed is just better conversations around our whole health. And what I mean by that is, mental health has almost been a dirty word. For a long time, forever. And, you can't talk about like, oh, I sprained my wrist. You can't talk about your, ADD the same way. It was taboo. And I, as an adult, I was actually diagnosed with ADD and generalized anxiety. And that's just been part of my journey, right? That's not good. That's not bad. That's part of who I am. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do at Ascend and in organizations I'm part of is create open spaces for people to have those conversations. And, I think the pandemic helped to focus us and maybe the world to say, look, we can't separate physical and mental health. Like, this is a part of someone's whole health. And my hope is that those conversations, we're continuing to become, to strip away those taboo lines, and that we're becoming more open and receptive as communities to having those conversations to make sure people can get the support they need. Imagine like you sprained your wrist or broke your wrist and you didn't feel like you could tell anyone. And so you weren't going to go get help. I mean, that's anathema to us, right? But that's what's happening right now with mental health. So hopefully that's a little part of the good maybe that comes from COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, I think things are changing, and it's great to see, in the news, you see like Gabrielle in the Olympics talking about her mental health, and just more athletes and movie stars and that are starting to come out, and so it's good that it'll be less taboo, like you said, because it's a health item, just like you said, like hurting yourself or having cancer or anything else like that. So yeah, we need to be able to talk about it more, and so people aren't afraid to go get help and get the treatment they need. Yeah. And
I think the biggest influencers or people who we should speak more of that and make it it's okay to talk about is, again, the people at the top. If your boss is okay with this kind of conversation, you're not going to feel scared. This is who I am. This is what, this is how I am. But because it's been so taboo, and on the top, you're like, you don't want to say that. It's on the application, says right here, you don't say that you have any of those things, you won't get hired. You get scared because you're thinking, they don't want to know that about me. So you're kind of bringing half of yourself to work, which is a discussion that's been going around for some time. You're bringing only some parts of me, but not exactly everything. And so it's good to see, people in your position saying it's okay. Hey, I am like this, and it's okay to say that I am like this. It's okay for you to be that way and be you. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I applaud your bravery.
Yeah.
So going back to your experience in Tanzania, being a Mzungu, white man, how do you think that translates? Because with the past year with the Black Lives Matter and a lot of diversity and inclusion, equity and belonging kind of initiatives going on, how do you think that has influenced the way you handle that in your business?
Yeah, especially given that if you're a Mzungu over there, you know what it feels like to be the different one in the group, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was hugely transformative. And, part of the context, I was actually born in Japan. My parents were in the Foreign Service. And so, I lived in Beijing. I lived in Hong Kong growing up, and back in Washington, D.C. when we weren't abroad. But it's sort of like it opened my eyes up that, number one, service is a good thing and a noble endeavor. And number two, that there's this great, big, wide world out there where people look different, and they speak different languages, and they have different customs. And like, that's something to be celebrated. And so, when I went to Tanzania, at first I thought, well, I've lived abroad before and I've traveled a lot. So here we go. I got this. And I think I made that classic mistake of just saying, oh, there's like the US and then there's the rest of the world. And it's not true. There's the US and there's 183 other countries, sovereign nations with different customs and language. And many of those have multiple languages. And, the thing it brought home, one very small thing, but that was important is, you go elsewhere around the world, including in Tanzania, and everyone will speak English. And as Americans, we're going to assume you speak English, so I'm going to speak English to you. And I think it was really important. I ended up, I befriended a local elementary school teacher, and, he was willing to do, a few days after school, a week, he would give me Swahili lessons. And, oh my gosh, I learned so much from him. And it just allowed for such a better connection with my host family, with my colleagues who were Tanzanian, with the families I worked with. That was really powerful and humbling too, right? Because, oh my gosh, I'm bumbling around trying to speak this hard language, hard and beautiful language of Swahili. That was transformative for me. And so, I fast forward, and this was like, 16, 17 years ago. And I think one of the things that, I celebrate most is, it's sort of diversity, including diversity of people, diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. Like, that's what makes, that's not only what makes, like, I think, communities better. That creates better business ideas, right? And there's actually research on this. It creates like stronger groups. It creates, there's so many benefits to having this open mindset to say, let's celebrate, DEIB, and let's celebrate those around us. And oh, by the way, let's not just hire people who look like us, because that's really easy to do, right? Not just people who think like us and look like us and act like us. Let's actively go out and seek those who are going to bring different ideas. And so that's powerful. One of the things we did a while back was create a cultural awareness committee where we've got a couple co-chairs, 2 psychologists who are on our team who, and we had this just overwhelming outpouring of people who are interested in sometimes just learning more. And so having a neat learning space can be really powerful to people who really wanted to help make sure that, we were doing all we can as an organization to celebrate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And one of the things that always felt important to me is that this wasn't the latest fad, right? And so I had 44 years going back to when I was born in Japan, this idea that, again, differences are to be celebrated and cherished. And so, when I would look around and just see, big corporations just make these like statements, even if they're these beautifully written like statements, like, hey, what's going to happen next week? That's going to go away.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the work we have to do every single day, not just some splashy press release.
No, that's why I asked that question, because yeah, a lot of times I'll see on LinkedIn, oh, we hired so-and-so, our diversity and inclusion person, they'll make a big announcement. But I'm like, okay, that's great, but what are you doing about it? You know, how are you making sure that you have that inclusion? I mean, you might even be diverse. You might hire a lot of people from different cultures, but how are you ensuring that they feel included? Their thoughts and ideas and comments count, make a difference in the company.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was describing about like our week 1 training around intentionally talking about community. We have to intentionally talk about DEIB just being like part of our value set, right? So it's creating open conversations. And that comes back, it starts at the top as a leader, right? Creating safe spaces for our teams to have those conversations. And so, you know, as I, being personally passionate about these things, as I see things that happen in the news, or things that go on, like I'm going to share what I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing. And my hope there is that creates safe spaces for people to likewise share and to feel like, you know, we can have open conversations and dialogue. So I think that's the one critical part of the context. A huge part to me is making sure there's like professional development that's available to our teams. Right. And allowing them to self-direct to say, hey, I want to get more, whether it's, hey, just short webinars or internal trainings we might do around different types of, I don't know, use of gender pronouns or whatever it might be, just to help educate, to self-directing, you know, going to conferences to, you know, for things that people are specifically interested in. Like that feels like it needs to continue. But honestly, I think that the most important thing is that the conversation just has to keep being had. And so that as a leader, right, you never have enough time for anything, but being super intentional about that ongoing communication and creating those safe spaces and talking about it, in addition to, as you described, Matt, making sure you're proactively using DEIB as just part of your broader recruiting and hiring practices is important. And I'll share one last thing. You know, one of the things that really frustrates me, as you know, and I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I love to just post like very transparently, like, you know, what I'm thinking. But you know, when you just see, hey, happy Juneteenth, and then it's just some nice little picture and a bland, gosh, you talk about like, it just feels so empty.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I try to do when I do share those conversations externally, and I'm talking about it, is, you know, it comes back to like talking about what is something that like is like really personally resonant with me, whether it's my experience in Tanzania or having studied abroad in China or being born in Japan or whatever it might be. Like, I want to tie that back to like how that truly makes me feel. And that feels more authentic than just posting up that little blurb that says, hey, let's celebrate today, just because we needed something to post on social media.
Yeah. No, I agree about that.
Great.
I didn't think about that deeply, but now that you mentioned it, I'm like, yeah, wait, people do that a lot. When you have those moments, you just see them post about happy this or that, and they don't really know what the meaning of that is. They just posted it because, it's that day. You know, they can Google what day is it today, how special is it, and then post that, but have no idea about what that meaning is. So yeah, it's good that you know that. It is kind of frustrating to see that, you know. I think people should take a little bit more time and learn about how this day is important. Say something more than just happy this day, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I like how you said related it back to yourself. So that shows that, you know, you have some kind of understanding of it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're just quoting from a history book or what someone else said. So I think that's good advice for sure.
Mm-hmm. I did want to mention that I'm going to give you a title as a global citizen. I stole that from someone on LinkedIn because you were born there, studied here, lived here, traveled there. And I was like, gosh, you are a global citizen.
I don't know that I deserve that, but hey, aspiring global citizen. It's almost like
you qualified.
You know, the big thing that I keep and Kim, my wife, and I talk about now is like, how do we help our kiddos? You know, our 3 kids have those experiences, and how do we help enable that for others in our community? So yeah, it's just always striving.
Oh no, oh, there we go.
Oh,
Are you back? Oh, we got you
yes.
back.
Froze again.
Yes. Please repeat this last part you just said.
Oh, it's having, trying to instill that in my family. And I want to give my kiddos who are just 10, 8, and 6 a chance to go abroad and live abroad and try to learn a different language. That feels really important.
Oh no, we definitely agree with you 100% because we have a similar thing here. Matt's older children are French, half French. And then my older ones are from Louisiana, and then ours, I don't know, she's a mix of something. So we have a variety of mixture of children, and they go to France, we go to Tanzania, and it's like, trying to teach them what is out there. Keep yourself open, travel, learn about different people, because it really does make a difference. Because like you, I've traveled in many countries, and I feel like it has filled me as a person where I'm really able to just look at people as people. Like, you don't have to be like me at all. And I admire, like I always say and tell Matt, we're like a garden of flowers. If all the flowers look the same, how boring would that be? Some are tall, some are short, some are a little interesting, but that's what makes the whole garden all great together,
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like, it's very easy to just sort of get into our tight-knit communities or tribes, right? And I don't know, I'm constantly challenging myself to say, hey, my tribe is the world, right? Why do we have to have these distinct barriers of nation states? How can I channel that? It's really interesting actually, as you mentioned, France, when I got my MBA, our capstone project was around social venture capital. So we were in India and Mumbai, and then traveled to Nice, France. And actually that there was so much cognitive dissonance in, first being in Mumbai and I mean, seeing people do extraordinary things, but there's a certain sort of per capita income or GDP there. And then going to Monaco and seeing again, like people in social venture capital do extraordinary things, but they're just phenomenally different. Anyway, there's this huge cognitive distance. But what I'll never forget is we were out with, one of our French guides one day, and he was kind of pointing out different villages. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's an old village. That's goes back 1,000 years. Oh yeah, this is a new neighborhood. It's only 300 years old." And I was just like, I mean, I can walk down the street right here in Golden, Colorado, and see a new neighborhood that just went up like last week. Right? And they're talking about new neighborhoods being 300 years old. What a great sense of like grounding in perspective to say, well, okay, there's this like homage to like history and what's come before us that feels really powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Old in Europe is different than old in the United States. Right?
Oh yeah.
Something from antique stores like from the 50s or over there it's from the medieval times. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean it's a culture thing as well, because the way we look at old here as you're dying off, you're old. And then the way others look at old as no, you're wise. You're actually we should look up to you. It's interesting how that is in different places of the world,
Yeah, that's true.
It is there's the old, I think, is a Chinese proverb or something that like the taller the bamboo, the deeper you bow. Right. Which like is so true, right? Which comes right back to that idea of wisdom and like growing humility. It's a hard skill to cultivate, but so important.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been so fun. And just before I wrap up with the last questions, I wanted to ask, is there anything that we should have asked that we haven't asked that you would like to share? And what would that answer be to that question that we should have asked?
Maybe, what's most important in life? And, as I get older, and I don't know that I'm getting wiser, I'm getting more bald, that's for sure.
I can't get more bald.
Right. To me, the most important thing in life is like spending time with values aligned people who make you want to be a better person. And I think, was it Einstein who once said like, hey, if you're not growing, you're dying, or if you're not learning, you're dying. And it's something that's felt really important as I spend time with, with people that are important to me in my life and that I want to spend time with. I recognize there's so much that I can still learn. And that requires like creating active, like learning mindsets and this notion of how can I get 1% better every day? How can my organization just get 1% better every day? It doesn't take these huge leaps. But I think it comes back to this idea of surrounding myself with amazing people who I just want to keep learning from.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. Learning is continuous.
Yeah, and I met this guy on a cruise ship once, from a Danish guy, and he said, the older I get, the more I realize the less I know.
Yes.
It's so true.
I get goosebumps. It's so true, right?
Yeah.
You're young, you think you know everything, you got it all figured out, and the older you get, you're like, man, I don't have anything figured out. I thought I had it figured out, and then I learned this. It told me that what I thought for 20 years made no sense. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Cool. Well, I have no questions for me anymore.
No, I guess maybe the final question is, is there a key takeaway or something you'd like to help other entrepreneurs or leaders that will help them, that can help them kind of get in the mindset that you have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'll share one of my favorite quotes from one of the most amazing coaches in history, Coach John Wooden, who's the winningest coach in NCAA basketball history. He's won more championships than anyone else. But he said, I am at my best when my team is achieving their best. And I just think there's this humbleness to that and selflessness that is so important for leaders to have, for entrepreneurs to have, that I'm profoundly grateful for having, had mentors over the course of my life who helped me to understand that. And so, if you're putting your team first every day of the week and twice on Thursdays, you can never go wrong. That will come back to you in spades and one.
Yep. We're all about teams.
You're very inspirational, Jonathan. Really, you are like a lighthouse to many. So really, really grateful for everything you've shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
So again, that was Jonathan Mueller, and this has been The Interchange by Maximyz. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.